Did you know that over 60% of all hospital adverse events in the USA are due to miscommunication? That is just a crazy statistic, and it's almost hard to believe, but it's in fact the truth. This shows how communication can be a life or death problem in certain situations. And this is something we don't really want, but there's not quite such an easy fix. However, active listening might just be the remedy. It might just be a key component to help overcome this poor communication errors. Defined active listening is the practice of engaging closely with the speaker, indicating understanding through summarizing questions and nonverbal cues that are all related to the topic at hand. This helps improve your understanding and just what you're engaging with, what you're listening. It helps you take it in better and understand it to the fullest potential. And it's with this that active listening can help reduce miscommunication in about three main areas, especially in preventing errors and overcoming cultural bias. It is able to act as the engine of success for conflict resolution and problem solving in high stakes environments. And it is also able to help build trust and strengthen relationships due to its nature. To begin, I'd like to explore the profound impact active listening has in preventing critical errors, especially within the medical field. So, the first study I found was one of such great importance. What it was is they had 73 intern doctors over in Pakistan, and they did things like they measured their dependent variables such as empathy, their doctor patient relationships, and other things of that nature. And so, with these in mind, they trained them over a 1 day active listening period. And it was after this that they found their improvements in these dependent variables had increased significantly. And even after a 3 week follow up period, after that 1 day, just 3 weeks ago, they were still showing signs of improvement in maintaining this high quality of communication and listening. It is with active listening that it shows how it's such a critical skill that can lead to increasing cultural competence because you're able to understand your patients better, what their background might be, and how they best communicate. And it also prevents errors because with this clarity, you are not making up information, you're taking in everything, and you're making correct diagnoses, you know what I'm getting at. And that's just so important because such uh, corrections to these areas could mean life or death. And in this case, it looks like we're improving them. And this is all uh, justification that could show how active listening could be implemented into the medical curriculum to improve the future, improve overall care, and improve these relationships and biases and errors. And it's so important in that manner. But, however, no matter your understanding of a person's culture or the understanding you have of them, errors and conflict are always going to show up. But active listening is very good at helping enhance problem solving and overcoming conflict. Thanks to Uyghur, Castle, and Emmett, they did a study and they explored how active listening works in peer interviews. And this is especially through the process of paraphrasing. Now, that might not seem like uh, a big key indicating factor of reducing errors and conflict, but uh, paraphrasing is kind of a form of verbal mimicry that is shown to increase the likeness and rapport between two parties. And it's this likeness and rapport that's able to help get the most information out of what someone has to say. As the kind of bond between these two builds using paraphrasing, the more the two parties like to interact with each other. And the greater this likeness, the more information they're willing to elicit. Now, that's where the problem solving comes in. Because once this person has shared all the details necessary, the listener now has all the tools to help solve this problem. And for someone who might be in a heightened state of emotions and can't really think for themselves, it's so important to build this trust and rapport between the two. That way, problem solving can be solved effectively. And another thing this study explored is kind of how this applies to things like hostage situations. Um, by kind of paraphrasing and uh, using that technique to increase their likeness and rapport with the hostage capturers and negotiators, they're able to elicit more information because as they build this rapport and likeness, they are able to remedy this situation much better than just going at it without any information. So, that is one way of showing how important active listening can be at resolving conflict and enhancing problem solving. But the study also found that message paraphrasing wasn't just enough. It takes a little bit more. It takes nonverbal cues such as gesturing, eye contact, nodding, to really convey the full empathy. And this combined with paraphrasing is able to elicit the most information and the greatest relationship. And it just shows even more how important it is with other aspects of active listening. It's also important to see that healthy relationships are key to preventing conflict and enhancing problem solving. And another interesting thing just to take note of is that active listening research in the past has usually been done on parties and couples who are in endearing relationships, and that almost creates a little bit of bias. And that's kind of what this article had talked about. However, the next article totally steers away from this and is quite innovational, quite monumental because of this uh, change of pace, change of study. Now, to switch it up a little, what if I told you that without active listening, you could not feel valued? How'd that make you feel? Not being able to validate your emotions, walking around knowing that no one understands you? Well, luckily, active listening is able to help prevent this. And this is not the reality we live in because we have such a powerful tool like active listening. And this study shows that using active listening can help people feel valued and appreciated. And something to know is that people who do feel valued often like to stay where they are. Now, I'm going to give a personal example from my own experience, but I was working at a job where it wasn't the greatest place. It was fun day in, day out, but the people there, the people I worked with, were such great people and they really helped me feel valued. I could come to them with anything, and that really created an environment where I wanted to be and I felt belonging. And it just felt good to be there where I was valued and felt appreciated by others. And this is important. This is an example for me, but it shows how important it is for all people in all aspects of life. But to fix this issue of feeling not valued, we have to first create a better relationship to increase the bond between two people. This allows for more trust and value to be conveyed and given amongst the two parties. Well, active listening doesn't always guarantee immediate rapport, like we kind of saw in the last article. It takes that extra step. Active listening does prove as a mechanism to drive successful relationships, though. This article's a study that it does on business negotiations showed how active listening with two parties allowed each other to reach greater goals together, and in fact, greater joint economic outcomes in this case, because the conversations were steered more towards the process rather than the final product. When you get caught up in that final product, it doesn't really matter what you're doing at the moment, but that's the total opposite. It does matter what you're doing at the moment. It does matter how you're working with others and the language you're using and making sure everyone's valued, because it turns out that this helps create better joint outcomes where both parties can benefit. And the success of this relies on decoding. So that's kind of what's going on in the background along this process. That is, decoding is prioritizing information and analyzing it to take in all the problems appropriately rather than just being guided by the emotions you're feeling or the product you want to get to. It allows you to really see the whole picture, which is so important at building these relationships and in building this trust. Reframing your knowledge is so important, especially now, since we've looked at all these aspects of active listening. And we've looked at them in three main ways of how they apply to our real lives. And the first of which was in the medical field, where active listening was used to overcome cultural bias and help prevent critical errors. And from that, we did also learn that it's a trainable skill, which is quite important. Secondly, we found that it was the engine of success for conflict resolution, thanks to building rapport and using message paraphrasing. And lastly, we also learned that it builds trust and strengthens relationships while also driving better joint outcomes through all of the little methods of active listening. And I want to leave you with this. I want you to understand that the difference between a successful outcome and a preventable failure is usually active listening. Active listening is such a critical skill that can be used in our everyday lives. And I mean, we've only looked at three areas, but there's so many boundless more. I encourage you to use it and to better your life and to use it to stop just listening just to respond, but listen to understand and use that element of decoding to take all the parts of the message and really come up with a powerful and effective way to help solve problems. I mean, active listening is just the ultimate tool for overcoming misunderstandings. As we've seen, without it, we have adverse hospital events, and those are just not a great things to have. But with it, we have a better future and hopes of a better tomorrow.